Good evening. There are two things I want to talk to you folks about tonight, both pertaining to Todd Standing. One is my updated and current position on Todd Standing and his evidence and his things and his documentary and the way he does business, and the other thing about his court cases. So I'd like to go ahead and talk about the court cases first. There are two court cases currently going in and out, being dismissed or refiled. The first one is in California, pretty close to me. Nice lady, Claudia Ackley, had a encounter with a Sasquatch, and she even filmed one. And there's been a lot of reports in the Big Bear area where she lives in Southern California, in the Southern California mountains. And she enlisted the help of Todd Standing. He came out and did multiple investigations, went way back in the hills there. And he says, yes, definitely, there are Bigfoots in the Big Bear area, which I would tend to agree with him. There's a lot of reports there historically. It's a lot bigger mountain range than people suspect. And, there's lots of water and deer and everything else up there. So why wouldn't there be? So, yes, I think Bigfoots are up there too. I would agree with him that. So they originally filed a case, and it was kind of pending and going back and forth. Then they withdrew their case because they wanted to resubmit it with different wording. I haven't heard if they've resubmitted. I assume they're still working with lawyers because it's very expensive and takes a long time to get anything done in the legal system. So I do support him. I do support Claudia Ackley. I hope they do get it resubmitted. Our legal system's a bit different than Canada. So there's different standards and different burdens of proof and that kind of thing. The other legal case in the update that came out this week is from Canada, where he had his day in court and the judge moved for dismissal, which means they're going to dismiss the case. And they weren't even, according to Todd, they weren't even very interested in the evidence. They just said, well, this is a subject for the legislature or the executive branch, for people to vote, for their Congress to come up with a law to recognize the species and come up with a protection. And to be honest, that makes sense, as disappointing as it is. I hope he's able to refile. He seems like a little bummed out, but still very confident that he's got another trick up his sleeve and he'll come up with another way. And between you and me, Todd seems like a smart guy as far as legally, and he has a pretty good understanding about how this stuff works. And I hope he comes out with another way. I know Canada isn't the U.S., but it would be a great... I know Washington State already made it illegal to kill a Sasquatch, and that's been on the books for a long time. But it would be really awesome if we get another country on board and then another state. Or I know there's a few cities across the USA or counties that have made it illegal to shoot or harass a Sasquatch. But I think if the more and more cities and states and smaller counties and smaller governments start recognizing it, then that would probably be the way, and then maybe another state can vote on it. I mean, California, we vote on the stupidest things here, and our legislature comes up with the craziest laws. I mean, Bigfoot protection having them recognized would be better than, our plastic straw ban, in my opinion, but that's getting way off subject. So I really support Todd in these lawsuits. I think it's a good method to get the message out there. I know they're expensive, and I know it takes forever, and legal firms are really difficult to deal with sometimes, and there's a lot of intricacies that if you're not a lawyer, you don't understand. So I support him, and I think he's going to keep pushing forward. And, not that he ever would, but if you ever needed any help from me or any of those type of connections out there or research or evidence, I mean, I support him. I, for one, would love the truth of Bigfoot to come out. It's one of those, even more so than UFOs and everything else. When you look at the overwhelming majority of evidence, I always laugh when people said, oh, there's no evidence for Bigfoot. I have more evidence for Bigfoot than just about anything else out there. So I hope he wins it. And that also kind of gets me down to his evidence. Now, the problem with an independent researcher, Todd, me, or anybody else, if we go out and film a Bigfoot, even the best footage you've ever seen, something way better than the Patterson-Gimlin film, and we put it out there. The problem with that is I filmed it, and you have to take my word on that. I filmed it at this location at this time with the subject. Now, if I was walking down a road and I saw Bigfoot and the Bigfoot saw me and somebody I didn't even know was there filmed both of us having that interaction, then that would be third-party evidence. That would be corroborating evidence that would be direct evidence. But since I'm the one collecting it, you have to take at a certain point my word of what's going on and what's happening. And so the most incredible footage in the world, even that's why Patterson-Gimlin film still gets some heat, is we have to take their word that they were there, no matter how many times we analyze it and how many times we go over proportions and walk and movement and enhance it. I mean, I'm 100% convinced of the Patterson-Gimlin film, but not everybody is, just because it was two guys in the woods who kind of went out looking for Bigfoot, found one, and filmed it. So that's kind of the inherent problem with the evidence. So I'll just kind of leave it at that. So that's pretty much what I think is going on and what's going on I've heard with the court case. So the second part of this video I wanted to talk to you guys about is my opinion of Todd Standing and my thoughts on his evidence. And to give you guys a little background, earlier this year I did a review on his Discovering Bigfoot documentary when it first came out, and it was a pretty overall negative review. I didn't like the way he was kind of being like a Marlboro man and crashing around on his four-wheeler and kept, PhD doctor. I just wasn't super impressed with the documentary. And at the time, I actually said his photo evidence, the close-up face pictures that he had were laughable. And I don't necessarily believe that anymore, but at the time I was being pretty harsh in the review. Well, I posted the review, I got a lot of hate, I got a lot of support, and it was a big trying time for me. Well, his production company, Alchemy Studios or something like that, put a copyright strike against me on YouTube. The video got taken down. The money I earned from the video had been removed as well. And then later on, I also got a notice saying that they contacted me about removing the video beforehand, which they never did. I never got an email. So if they did or not, I don't know, but I never got it. And then later they threatened to sue me if I ever reposted the video. Now, the problem was not that there was one image of a dark-faced Bigfoot that looked almost like a man with latex stuff on his face and like black shoe polish on his face, and this was the demon Bigfoot. And a lot of other videos on YouTube got taken down too, and copyright files. I guess this was kind of their big money shot that they didn't want out there. And whether that's a real Bigfoot or not, I'm not going to specify anymore. I've softened to it. He can claim it is, and I'm not going to refute him, but I'm not necessarily convinced either. So that image is what got me in trouble on my review, and it was this whole big long thing. So since then, with the two lawsuits, like I said, I'm not entirely convinced, and the reason why is we never see full body shots of any of his Bigfoots. Now, he does have an older film from like 10, 12 years ago, I believe, of what appears to be a Sasquatch, some dark-colored, furry-looking, two-legged creature running up a hillside at great speed. Now, it would be very difficult for a human to do that in a costume. I wouldn't say necessarily impossible. You could probably get a very athletic basketball player, track runner, and make a lightweight suit and film it from an angle and have them run up that hillside. Or he could have legitimately filmed the Sasquatch running away from him. That one I'm not, really on the fence about, almost leaning towards I think he maybe did film a Bigfoot. But the images you see in the background are some of the face shots, frontal shots that Todd has claimed to have gathered over the years. And like I said, there's just the eyes, the face, they just, to me, just on the surface, if I had never seen these before, they just look like a prosthetic or a mask or an animatronic. I know one of them stays pretty still and blinks in one of his videos, which they've been able to have blinking animatronics since, the 60s, or mask or whatever. But if that's not what it is, and it is a real Bigfoot, cool, these just don't necessarily, they have human proportions. All the other Bigfoot stuff I've seen and been looking into this for a long time don't have human proportions. These same creatures that he has these close-up face shots of, he doesn't show any body shots of them, so we can't go off of arm length ratio versus leg length ratio like we can on some other Bigfoot evidence, and waist size and all the other stuff that we go by to try to determine if it's a guy in a suit or not. So it's just too ambiguous just being full face shots. And that's what everybody wants in the Bigfoot world, is they want to look at its face and they want to look into its eyes. And if it is real, they're incredible. If it's not, well, he did a pretty good job of saying this is what a Sasquatch looks like. Some of his older photos, like the one you see in the background now, is one where he just captured it for a second standing up. And this very well could be a real Bigfoot. This film, I don't doubt. It's just those close-up face shots. One that looks like he tried to replicate like a patty Bigfoot, and then the other ones of what they call like the Muppet, where it has almost kind of an Eskimo face. Now, if this is a Bigfoot, awesome. If it's not, like I said, I don't know. I'm just not 100% convinced. So I've pretty much softened to where I'm kind of neutral, not really feeling one way or the other, not completely convinced that it's a fake, but not completely convinced that it's real. So I think in the end, I am supportive of Todd Standing. I want him to win his court cases. I want him to bring back some astounding evidence. I would love it if he got a full body shot of one of these things running or walking away, like the full patty, so to speak. Maybe in conjunction with a face shot, or maybe just it walking away where we can get a good look at its arms and legs. And then maybe if he goes and gets footprints, and then, or maybe a hair sample, or has audio recordings, something like the Sierra Sounds, where we can break it down and analyze and see that, well, no human could have this vocal range, or have these non-human proportions, or something a little bit different, as opposed to just these kind of arbitrary still face shots, or the one just standing there blinking. And like I was saying, the problem is when anybody collects evidence, if I collect evidence, the Patterson-Gimlin film, any Bigfoot evidence, if a researcher or accidental or otherwise catches something, that's great. But we still have to take your word on the context of it, of where you filmed it, how you got it, what you were doing out there. Were there any footprints? Did anybody else see you do this? Were anybody else traveling with you? Were you by yourself? Were you with a big group of people? Could somebody be hoaxing you? Are you close to this or that? There's so many other things that go into it. Versus if I was walking down the street and a Bigfoot walked out in front of me, and somebody else I didn't know was even there was filming this whole encounter, then that's impartial third-party evidence of me having an encounter with a Bigfoot. Now, that would be incredibly rare and very low on a probability list that somebody would be filming me with a Sasquatch without my knowledge, or maybe with my knowledge but not knowing that they were doing it. But that would be the most ideal situation. But then again, you can always dismiss that as a hoax. So there's just so many layers that trying to prove it in a court of law, trying to prove it to the general public, trying to prove it to a hardcore Bigfoot fan, trying to prove it to a passing fan, someone who's maybe got a fleeting interest in me, trying to prove it to me personally, or trying to prove it to somebody else. It just makes it very hard because there's just so many variables, and everybody always says, well, I'm not going to believe it till they bring in a body. And then you get into the whole government thing of, they're never going to let it go. They're never going to let a body out there. What you're seeing here is the other thing about Todd Standing's business. Now, I'm all for business. This is America. Do what you can. You can go out in the woods with him and on a 6-night, 7-day expedition, and he gets you up close and personal with Bigfoots. Apparently, that's what he's claiming, or at least in their habitats, and you can see where they live. And it's at the price of $4,800. Now, that does seem pretty steep, especially since it's not including airfare. But, he's no doubt making money on this, but there's also no doubt that all these court cases he's involved with and all these expeditions cost a tremendous amount of money, too. So, and I support people making money off of Bigfoot and off your passion. If you can be the most wonderful artist in the world or researcher and make money off it, then go for it. I have no problem with that. But he's definitely running it as a business. So there's always that aspect of we have to consider about what he's doing. So anyway, that's kind of where I am with Todd Standing. I'm not 100% convinced of all his evidence. I think he's got a lot of good evidence. I hope he wins his court cases. I just wish he would maybe tone down the Marlboro Man attitude and crashing around on ATVs and in ghillie suits hopping around on rocks. And I was trained by a sniper in Special Forces. I just wish maybe if he presented himself as a little more quiet professional, cut his hair, cut his beard, and just kind of came to people and say, hey, I've been out in the woods, I've studied, I've trained, enough of all that. Here's what I got, and here's the context for it. I think it would go a lot longer than all the theatrics. But then again, that's his style. It's his company. It's his stuff. It's his evidence. He can do what he wants to do. I just think that kind of puts off people as well. So anyway, Todd Standing, I'm a lot more neutral about it these days. It got me a lot of hate. It also got me a lot of support. And I appreciate the support, but I really don't like the hate. Nobody does. But we're all entitled to our opinions, whether you like them or not. And we're all on the same Bigfoot team here. We would love to see this species recognized. We would love to know if there is more than one species, and we would love to go out and study them, and we'd love to have some big universities and multi-million-dollar research projects to know about these things. We'd love to know what the government already knows about these things, because I'm sure they have big files on it, and they know where they move and how they move and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, thank you very much, folks. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe in the woods.